There is a psychological theory known as pan-determinism. It argues that human beings are essentially highly complex biological machines. According to this view, every choice we make is strictly dictated by our genetics, our childhood traumas, and our environmental conditioning. This deterministic perspective was heavily shaped by early psychoanalytic frameworks. Think of Sigmund Freud and his contemporaries, who often viewed the human mind as a closed system of basic instincts, drives, and predictable reactions. But what happens when this theory is pushed to its absolute limit? What happens if you strip away every societal variable, every comfort, and every semblance of normality? We find the answer in Auschwitz in 1944. This is where we meet Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist who had his life's work confiscated, his identity entirely erased, and his existence reduced to 6 digits tattooed on his skin. Prisoner number 119104. Frankl was thrown into an environment of absolute depravity. Every ounce of human dignity was systematically dismantled by the captors. Prisoners were subjected to arbitrary beatings, freezing temperatures, and constant, agonizing hunger. The stakes of this environment offer a perfect test case. If pan-determinism is entirely true, every single prisoner subjected to this horrific environment is biologically destined to degenerate into a ruthless animal. Survival of the fittest should be the only remaining instinct. The psychological shock of arriving at the camp was designed to break the mind. Prisoners were stripped of their clothes, their hair. They were stripped of their pasts. All that remained was a naked body. This reduced their existence to pure, biological vulnerability. Following this initial shock came a second psychological stage, an emotional shutdown. This numbness became a necessary protective shell. It was the only way the mind could endure the constant physical and mental abuse without shattering completely. In many ways, the camp environment seemingly validated determinism. It forced many prisoners to become capos, inmates who acted as supervisors. To secure extra food, these capos turned against their own peers, often behaving with more cruelty than the Nazi guards themselves. The daily baseline of this regression was an existence completely hollowed out. Prisoners dreamed only of bread, of warm baths, and of cigarettes. All complex thought and motivation were flattened down to the primal instinct of securing a single bowl of watery soup. Looking purely at the baseline data, it is easy to conclude that the environment dictated behavior entirely. The evidence seems to prove that humans are indeed biological machines, reacting predictably to severe trauma. But Frankl noticed an anomaly. There was a small but undeniable percentage of prisoners who defied their environmental programming. There were men who walked through the barracks offering a comforting word and giving away their very last piece of bread. There were doctors who voluntarily transferred to deadly typhus wards to care for their dying peers, knowing they might not survive the assignment. Frankl himself experienced this psychological defiance. While freezing and starving on a forced march, stumbling over icy mud, he tapped into an inner life so vivid it eclipsed the camp. He spent hours conversing with the memory of his wife, realizing that even in total deprivation, the human spirit can still anchor itself in love. This diagram shows the core realization Frankl took from the camp, that between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. That space proves the environment does not completely dictate the human soul. No matter the external horrors, the final human freedom remains, the ability to choose your own attitude in any given set of circumstances. After surviving the war, Frankl used these extreme observations to found a new school of psychiatry called logotherapy. Unlike previous theories, logotherapy argues that our primary drive as human beings is not pleasure, and it is not power. It is the pursuit of meaning. We need to clarify a major misconception here. Meaning is not something we invent or fabricate out of thin air. It is something we discover by taking responsibility for our lives and answering the challenges the world puts in front of us. This chart outlines the 3 paths Frankl identified for discovering meaning, regardless of your life circumstances. The first path is dedicating yourself to a task. Frankl did this in the camp by secretly reconstructing his confiscated medical manuscript on tiny scraps of paper. The second path is experiencing love for another human being. connecting with their essence. The third pillar is unavoidable suffering. Years after the war, Frankl treated an older doctor suffering from severe depression after the death of his wife. Frankl simply asked, "What would have happened if you had died first?" The doctor realized his wife would have suffered the exact agony he was enduring now. By reframing his grief as the price he paid to spare her that pain, his grief became a meaningful sacrifice. This brings us back to the duality of human nature observed in the camps. The exact same environment produced men who acted like saints and men who acted like swine. Humans are the beings who invented the gas chambers of Auschwitz, but they are also the beings who walked upright into those very chambers with a prayer on their lips. We are not mere biological machines, and we are not victims of circumstance. As long as we take responsibility for our choices, no one can strip us of our ability to choose who we become.